What is it about Mount Kailash that just grabs you? You know, this incredibly remote, imposing peak, revered across so many spiritual traditions almost, humming with a sense of the sacred.
Yeah, there's definitely something there. And then you've got this enduring mystery.
Right. Why, unlike almost every other major mountain on Earth, its summit has, well, never been reached.
It truly sparks something in the imagination, that combination of profound spirituality and the persistently unknown.
Absolutely. And that's precisely what we're diving into today. We're going to explore this enigma, Kailash Parbat, through the lens of Dr. Meena Mahajan Guruma. She's a lifelong, dedicated devotee of Shiva.
Right, and we'll be looking at key moments from a really insightful YouTube video. It's from the Speaking Tree channel.
That's the one, where Guruma shares her deep understanding and some very personal encounters related to Kailash.
Okay.
So our goal for you today is to sort of extract those core insights, or really dig into this cone of why it stays physically inaccessible, and ultimately to grasp the deeper spiritual meaning that Kailash embodies. Okay, let's unpack this.
Sounds good.
One of the first things Guruma says that really stood out to me is that for her, Kailash isn't just a place on a map.
Yeah, that was striking.
It's fundamentally a state of being, a state of mind completely free from what she calls Kailash.
Kailash, right. And she explains that covers like all forms of suffering and conflict.
Exactly.
So the first key insight here is that Kailash, in its truest sense, isn't really about geography, but about achieving an internal state that's devoid of suffering. That's a powerful concept, you know, shifts the focus inwards.
It really does. And she directly links this to the idea that where Kailash truly resides, there just can't be any Kailash.
No conflict, no suffering.
That's a profound statement, isn't it? It really challenges us to think about Kailash not just as a destination, like a place to get to,
right,
but as this ideal condition we might strive for within ourselves.
Definitely. Though, of course, she doesn't dismiss the physical reality of Mount Kailash.
No.
Or Adi Kailash.
Yeah.
And the sacred Mansarovar Lake. She acknowledges those places are clearly very important for devotees.
Immensely important. And she also touches on something that many pilgrims report experiencing, Darshan.
Ah, yes, those powerful visions or glimpses of Shiva during the often very tough Kailash Yatra.
These really personal experiences, they just add another layer to the whole mystique surrounding the mountain, don't they?
They absolutely do. It speaks to the incredibly potent spiritual atmosphere that seems to, well, envelop these sites.
And the deep, unwavering faith of the pilgrims taking that journey, which naturally brings us to one of the central puzzles of Kailash.
The fact that nobody's climbed it?
Exactly. Despite all our modern mountaineering prowess, no one has ever successfully reached its summit.
It's quite remarkable when you think about it. I mean, we've stood on the highest points of Everest, K2, all these incredibly formidable peaks, yet Kailash remains untouched. Guruma recounts these fascinating anecdotes, you know, the strange occurrences reported by those who've tried.
Oh, right, like the really rapid nail growth.
Yeah, that and a sort of disorienting sense of accelerated time.
Yeah.
Things you can't easily explain.
And these almost indescribable phenomena that ultimately cause even seasoned climbers to just turn back.
They just can't proceed.
These accounts are certainly intriguing, and they definitely deepen the mystery. Makes you wonder if there's more at play here than just the, the sheer physical challenge.
Right, this idea of accelerated timelines and unseen forces really hints at something beyond our current scientific grasp, perhaps.
Totally. So given this sort of physical barrier, Guruma offers a fascinating alternative perspective, suggesting the true Kailash might be something we cultivate within ourselves.
Yes, this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
She introduces this really empowering idea of creating Kailash within oneself, actively cultivating that inner state of acceptance and profound harmony.
And she draws that parallel to the traditional depictions of Kailash, right? Where you see natural enemies.
Yeah, like the snake and the mouse or the lion and the bull.
Coexisting peacefully. That's powerful imagery. It really speaks to a deep level of inner and outer equilibrium.
It does. And she starkly contrasts this with the Kailash, the conflict that seems so pervasive in our modern lives.
Even within our own family sometimes. It really makes you reflect on the constant conflicts, the disharmony we often experience.
For sure. And her emphasis on embodying the qualities of peace associated with Kailash in our own lives. That's a really empowering message for you, the listener. It suggests that even if a physical pilgrimage isn't possible, the fundamental spiritual essence of Kailash is accessible to everyone, right here, right now.
It's about the inner state. She also clarifies the connection to Kinnar Kailash, making sure to point out it's a distinct, separate location from Mount Kailash itself.
Yes, good clarification. And she offers a really interesting perspective on what it means to reach any sacred abode of Mahadev. She highlights that it almost always involves overcoming significant difficulties. She uses the historical example of the pilgrimage to Kedarnath.
Oh, right. Which for centuries was done entirely on foot, an incredibly arduous journey.
Exactly, not a quick trip. It demanded immense dedication, huge physical endurance, which leads her to contrast maybe the merit of that traditional foot pilgrimage with the relative ease of modern helicopter travel.
Ah, okay, yeah.
She raises a really thought-provoking question.
Yeah.
Does the nature of the experience, the spiritual benefit perhaps, stay the same when the physical hardship is basically removed?
That's a good question, and she beautifully articulates this idea that the journey itself, the anticipation, the challenges you face and overcome, that these elements often hold even greater significance than just, arriving at the destination.
She used that wonderful analogy, appreciating the smell of rice cooking.
Yes. The whole process, the journey, holds its own intrinsic value, its own lessons.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it circles right back to her initial teaching, that truly connecting with Mahadev requires us to transcend the limitations of our physical bodies.
And the ego that often comes with them.
Precisely.
To illustrate this, Guruma shares a really personal, quite striking experience from Kedarnath.
Oh, right, the story about the vessel.
Yeah, she describes this seemingly random act where a priest in the middle of this huge crowd just hands her a sacred vessel, and then almost immediately after, she loses her own Rudraksha beads. Just gone.
And she interprets this as a Sanket, right? A sign.
Exactly. A sign of acceptance, a subtle communication that her devotion had been acknowledged by the divine.
It really highlights the significance of these fleeting moments of Darshan, that sacred glimpse, and their incredibly powerful impact, even amidst what might seem like total chaos.
And she talks about the importance of recognizing these Sanket, these subtle signs in your own life, that your devotion has been noticed.
It's a very personal, faith-based way of seeing that divine connection.
It is. What's particularly fascinating here is how she describes her relationship with Shiva evolving.
How it changed over time.
Yeah. She explains that initially her focus was all on her devotion toward Shiva, but then
She felt something shift.
she began to experience this profound shift, realizing that the divine was also actively showering love upon her.
Wow, that's a really powerful, transformative change in perspective.
Yeah.
From devotee to, well, beloved.
Exactly, which then leads into this truly profound, intensely personal encounter she shares, her own near-death experience.
The DVT and pulmonary embolism, that sounded incredibly serious.
Very serious, and she came to interpret it as Shiva himself taking her to the shmashan, the cremation ground, and then miraculously bringing her back.
That's a very powerful narrative.
Yeah.
Being on the very threshold between life and death, and then being granted a return. And her interpretation of this incredibly intense experience as an act of profound unconditional love. It's deeply moving.
And the fact that her recovery apparently baffled her doctors. The seemingly inexplicable way these serious medical issues just resolve.
Right, that adds another undeniable layer to this extraordinary experience, doesn't it?
It does, and it fundamentally reshaped her entire understanding of devotion. She moved from that sense of being a devotee
to feeling deeply, personally, like a recipient of divine love.
Yes, and this is where she introduces the concept of Shivbya.
Shivbya, can you unpack that a bit?
Yeah, it's this idea that when your very destiny, your bhaga, is guided by Shiva, your life naturally unfolds in complete accordance with his divine will.
Okay, so it signifies a state of total surrender, basically. Unwavering trust in that divine guidance.
Exactly. And she draws a distinction between this profound prem, this true divine love, and what she calls pyar, which she sees as more transactional, worldly love, often with expectations and conditions.
Okay, so prem is selfless.
Utterly selfless, unconditionally giving. She uses the analogy of a mother's selfless service to her child, that kind of pure giving love.
That's a beautiful analogy, the selfless, pure love.
Yep.
And it naturally leads to the question, Do people destined for this deep connection with Shiva get any kind of signs beforehand? Any symptoms or subtle calls?
Interesting question. And her response is, yes, she believes so.
Really?
She believes there are indeed subtle indications, sometimes even for people who might initially feel drawn to other deities or paths.
Oh, okay.
She really emphasizes this underlying unity, even stating there's no greater devotee of Hari Vishnu than Shiva and vice versa.
Right. It's about the fundamental essence of love and devotion, regardless of the specific form or name.
Exactly. Which really brings us full circle, doesn't it? Back to that central mystery we started with.
Why Kailash remains unconquered.
Yeah. We began there, and now we're revisiting it through all these profound insights Guruma shared.
And her interpretation at this point is quite compelling, I think. She attributes this inaccessibility not to a lack of physical capability.
Right, not because it's impossible, technically.
But rather to human ego. This relentless, often misguided desire to conquer, to dominate, rather than approach with reverence and humility.
Yeah, she really highlights Mahadev's inherent detachment from all that. From ego, from the modern, sometimes forceful scientific drive for control, from this constant human need to assert dominance over nature.
So her suggestion then is that humanity currently lacks the necessary purity of heart and spirit.
That seems to be it, that profound sense of complete surrender needed to even set foot on the summit. It's a rather sobering thought, actually.
It is. And she doesn't shy away from critiquing the modern tendency to, well, capture and commodify even sacred experiences.
Oh yeah, the social media aspect, the constant need for quick reels and videos.
She views this as inherently disrespectful, a fundamental misunderstanding of what sacred even means. Her belief is that only highly realized souls, people deeply immersed in serious spiritual practice, are granted any form of access.
She even mentions Mahavatar Babaji.
Right, as a divine being existing in a Jyoti Swarup, a luminous light form.
Who can grant Darshan, that divine viewing, but only to those who are spiritually ready.
Yeah.
And she concludes with this really beautiful, hopeful vision for the future, an era of greater purity where, in her words, the whole world is Kailash.
Wow. It's a truly beautiful sentiment to end on.
It is, isn't it? A hope for a future where that deep inner state of harmony, peace, and devotion permeates everything.
So, as we bring our deep dive to a close today, it seems Kailash is so much more than just a physical mountain that hasn't been climbed.
Definitely. It truly represents a profound inner state, doesn't it? A condition of being entirely free from suffering, from Kailash.
And true access, as Guruma so eloquently suggests, isn't about physical conquest or human achievement at all.
No, it's about deep inner transformation, complete surrender to the divine.
And perhaps those very real challenges in reaching it physically, maybe they serve as a kind of divine protection.
A protection against ego and irreverence. Yeah, constantly reminding us of the purity required to even begin to grasp its true essence.
Which raises a really important question for you listening now. Reflect on your own inner Kailash.
Yeah. What does it truly mean for you to find that inherent state of peace, that genuine devotion within yourself, completely independent of any physical journeys?
And maybe consider, could the fact that some sacred places remain physically inaccessible be in itself an invitation?
An invitation for what?
For a much deeper internal pilgrimage, a journey into the very depths of your own heart and being.
That's a powerful thought. And perhaps take some time to reflect on Guruma's insights about divine love. What subtle signs, what Sanket might already be present in your own life?
Perhaps indicating a deeper connection than you've even realized yet.
It certainly gives you a lot to contemplate.